Actually, Srila Prabhupada brought me to Krishna consciousness. I had seen the devotees in Berkeley on the street. I'd given donations, bought magazines, taken prasadam, and so on, and seen the Hare Krishna festival in the Berkeley Hills. But then I went to see Prabhupada give a lecture in the International House of the Berkeley campus, University of California at Berkeley. And it was actually upon seeing Prabhupada there that I really became fixed on Krishna consciousness. I had seen other so-called swamis and religious leaders. Actually, for a sociology of religion class, I had to go and observe different religious performances and ceremonies, and I'd gone to see a swami. It seemed like he wasn't saying anything practical or substantial, telling people how to relax. Just as Prabhupada, he always says that he was reluctant to go to see his spiritual master because he'd seen so many so-called sadhus. So in a little way, there's some similarity. But I went to see Prabhupada, and as soon as he entered the auditorium, I could see that this person is very different. His gravity, his power, his demeanor, he seemed to be practically like a military commander coming in, not in the sense of a violent person or anything like that, but just as authority. Here was a person I could see obviously that was filled with authority and yet serene at the same time. So the program started, the devotees began to chant. Prabhupada got up off the Vyasasana and began dancing, jumping in ecstasy. He was obviously an elderly person. That was in 1969, so he was over 70 years old. So to see this holy person so much filled with authority, over 70 years old, dancing in ecstasy, was quite overwhelming. When I got initiated in Los Angeles, I got a little piece of paper with my name that said Hridayananda. And so for some reason, I can't explain it or justify it, when I got my paper, I thought it was Hridayananda, but someone that just left out the A. The secretary had written it wrong. Can't explain that one. So when people said, "What's your name?" I said, Hridayananda, which sounds like a perfectly good Krishna conscious name. In fact, it even means something in Sanskrit. So no one ever questioned me. No one ever said, "That doesn't sound like a bona fide name." So for the first several months after I was initiated, I was Hridayananda to the world, not to Prabhupada. In fact, there's an old Back to Godhead article by Hridayananda Das Brahmachari. Anyway, so I wrote Prabhupada a letter about, probably about approximately a year after my initiation, and signed it Hridayananda. And Prabhupada wrote back and said, "Dear Hridayananda, please accept my blessings. By the way, your name is Hridayananda." So I thought, how in the world would Prabhupada remember me? Then when I went to Gainesville, Prabhupada wrote a letter to some of the other devotees in the temple, the young devotees, and said, "Now," he said, "Hridayananda is there, so I'm sure everything will go on nicely." And I was thinking, how in the world does Prabhupada remember who I am? So I was amazed by that, because I had no real importance within the structure of ISKCON. I was just a young member, and I was amazed that Prabhupada remembered who I was. Once, in the early 70s, I was sannyasi, so maybe 73, 74. And it was a beautiful afternoon. The sun was setting, and golden rays were shining on Prabhupada. It was very sublime. A nice breeze was blowing. It was a very beautiful atmosphere. And Prabhupada took us back to old India, the turn of the century, and when he was a child, when he was a young householder. And he took us there, actually, and he began to talk about how people used to work and relationships between householders and their servants, and how people used to cook and things. So there we were, back in India with Prabhupada. And then he took us back farther to his early childhood, when he was playing with, not playing, but having the Rath Yatra and worshipping Radha Govinda. And then only Karanda and I were in the room. The Prabhupada looked at us very strongly and said, "Whatever I'm doing now, I was doing then. Do you understand?" And of course we were at that point kind of speechless. And then Prabhupada said, never was there a time when I did not know Krishna. Do you understand? And he said it in such a way that it was clearly the case. So that was a very powerful experience. We brought Miss Mexico to see Prabhupada. You know, in those days we were young and we thought any celebrity, let's bring them to Prabhupada. So we brought Miss Mexico, and she came in. She was nice, you know, fluttering her eyelashes. And obviously she, as all these, you know, Miss America, Miss Mexico, they spend their year just going around and doing events and, you know, getting their picture taken and smiling, saying a few nice words here and there. So she was more or less in that mood. She came with a few gentlemen. So as she sat in front of Prabhupada, she made her customary spiel. She said it was very nice being in Mexico. In Spanish, I was translating. She said, I'm very glad to be here. I've enjoyed the program very much, and you know, I hope to come again sometime. So Prabhupada said to her, why do you want to come again? In other words, he was not at all concerned with the glamour of it all. He was very sober, and he said, why do you want to come again? And she couldn't really answer. You know, no one ever asked questions like that to Miss Mexico. And he asked her very seriously, why do you want to come? Then we had Prabhupada's books there on a shelf. He said, have you read my books? She said, no. He said, then why do you want to come? Why do you say you want to come again? So she was caught without an answer, and at that point she stopped being Miss Mexico and just started being a soul. When Prabhupada came to Gainesville in 1971, at the end of July, a wonderful visit. He was being interviewed. He arrived, he sat on the vyasam we'd made for him, and he gave a beautiful lecture. Then he was taking questions. There was one girl there. I guess that was 1971, but at that time she was a young girl. And in a somewhat challenging tone, she said to Prabhupada, I see that you have mostly young people here. Why is that? So Prabhupada immediately shot back, why do you have mostly young people in your university? And she was so much caught off guard, I remember she actually dropped her pencil. And she sort of, you know, groped for an answer, stuttering, and said, well, that's the age of education. He said, yes, therefore that is the age of Krishna consciousness. Another such exchange like that, where a few days before I took sannyas, Prabhupada was being interviewed by a reporter in his quarters in LA, and he knew something about Hinduism. He said, well, isn't it in India that old people take sannyas? Why are you giving sannyas to young people? So Prabhupada shot back, what does it change like that? And she sort of, you know, groped for an answer, stuttering, and said, well, that's the age of education. He said, yes, therefore that is the age of Krishna consciousness. Another such exchange like that, where a few days before I took sannyas, Prabhupada was being interviewed by a reporter in his quarters in LA, and he knew something about Hinduism. He said, well, isn't it in India that old people take sannyas? Why are you giving sannyas to young people? So Prabhupada shot back, what does it mean to be old? The man had no answer. Prabhupada said, old means about to die. Can you say that I'm older than you? Can you say that you're not going to die before me? Can you say? And he couldn't answer that. He said, therefore we are giving them sannyas. Prabhupada sometimes would joke as we entered his room, because obviously it's a very important thing when you would go into Prabhupada's room. I always considered it to be the most important event to go to before Prabhupada. So often I would come into his room very, very seriously, and he would sometimes sort of joke. One time I came into his room in that very serious mood, and he looked up at me and said with mock seriousness, yes, what is your message? Another time I came to his room in New York, And he was just finishing his breakfast. He was in a very jolly mood, and I was on a college preaching tour, and he said, "Oh, Hridayananda Maharaj." He said, "You were actually traveling and preaching. I'm just here eating." Anyway, so he was pleased with the college preaching tour. There's an interesting follow-up to that. He was pleased with the college preaching tour, and we talked about that for a while. So I was feeling very good. Prabhupada likes my program, and he gave me a little attention, so I was feeling very happy. Then the next day I went into Prabhupada's room thinking, well, here I am, the college preacher. And I sat in front of Prabhupada, and he didn't really speak to me. He was just doing his business. But there was a young girl, just some innocent girl, brahmacharini, who was changing Prabhupada's flower vases. And apparently with much devotion, so that Prabhupada was watching her and very pleased, smiling, just like a loving grandfather is watching this young girl change the flower vases. And he said to her, "Oh, thank you very much. What is your name?" So that day, Prabhupada didn't have a word for me, but he was rather very pleased by the devotion of this young girl. So in ISKCON, I was the sannyasi, etc., etc., and she was just some innocent girl, but she's the one that pleased Prabhupada at that time, because I was thinking I'm a sannyasi, and she was just an innocent girl serving with much devotion. So I never forgot that lesson also. A few months after I'd taken sannyas, I was... when you take sannyas, of course, you really have to be very serious about Krishna consciousness, because it's a, especially for a young man, precarious position. So I was trying very hard to be a good sannyasi. I was a young sannyasi trying hard to be Krishna conscious, and then you realize not really Krishna conscious enough as much, and Prabhupada deserves to be served much better than I felt that I'm serving him. So I was feeling a little bit in that mood, a little unhappy that I'm not serving Prabhupada properly. So, I thought, well, I better eat less, typical young man. I'm sure we all went through that, so I'm not going to eat very much. So I was trying to eat very little for a few days. So one day, we were out in Prabhupada's garden in Los Angeles, and we were coming back. Actually, every day he would come and get me, because I was trying not to impose on Prabhupada, but every day as he would walk down the stairs and go out to his garden, he would stop my little sannyas room, and he would just peek in the door, just walk in, look around, and just walk out and keep going. But of course, that was the signal, and I would immediately jump off my chair and offer obeisance and run after him. So every day he would come and get me like that. So one day we were coming back from the walk, and as we got near the stairway in his quarters, just as they are now in L.A., on the radiator, I don't know, probably it's still not there, there was one of those old radiators there. And on top of it was a typical thing, a paper plate with a big mound of leftover prasadam. I don't know, potatoes or rice, whatever, just big thing like that. So Prabhupada stopped, put his cane down, looked at it. They turned to me and just said, "Eat that." So much for my austerities. So then I immediately offered obeisance and took the plate and ate it. I was in Prabhupada's room one time when Jadharani came in. Her health was not good, and she told Prabhupada she wanted to fast, and Prabhupada told her, "Don't fast completely, at least take fruit." He said it's not good to fast completely. I think he also said personally he likes ghee, but he always said eat what you can digest. Prabhupada always said that. You should eat what you can digest. Prabhupada said to me, he said, if you eat what you like, it will be good for you. And my mother was always, of course, nice to me, never favorable, to the movement. I mean, she was polite and respectful and all that, but not, always just thinking how to get me out of this thing. Typical mother. So I said, let's go see Prabhupada. So she went up and sat down in front of Prabhupada, and I saw her transformed, actually. She became like a young girl sitting in front of Prabhupada. And of course, by her culture, she was very respectful and so on. And she became like a young girl, and Prabhupada began to tell her that how fortunate she was that her son was a devotee of Krishna, and she nodded in agreement. Her whole life since I joined was the opposite, but at Prabhupada's presence, she was overwhelmed, and she politely nodded in agreement. And then after a few minutes, she went downstairs. And for the only time she ever did that, she actually opened her purse and said, "Can I give you something for your movement?" You know, before his usual mantra, "Are you sure it's just for you?" Prabhupada was in Caracas, and we were desperately trying to get the first Spanish Bhagavatam, which was being printed in America, out of the printers and down to Caracas in time to give Prabhupada while he was still there in our zone. And he was flying from Caracas to Miami. So there were a few glitches, and the book was not coming in time. So we were disappointed. Then finally, somehow or other, frantic negotiations with the printer, and we arranged that the book was rushed down by air freight to Caracas, and it arrived the same morning Prabhupada was leaving. So we had some of our leaders there in Venezuela desperately, trying to get it out of customs, and South America is not always the easiest place in the world to do things like that. Meanwhile, Prabhupada went to the airport, and he was checked in and so on. We did all that for him. And to my great dismay, the book hadn't come, and Prabhupada went through the immigration check, passport check, and that was it. So just after Prabhupada had gone in and we'd paid obeisances, and I was a little disappointed, suddenly the book came. So I became so inspired to give this first Spanish Bhagavatam to Prabhupada. I was there, of course, with a shaved head and danda and so on. I just went running through the airport. And, it's a South American country. You can't just run through police checks and things like that in any country, and certainly not there either. But I was so inspired. Somehow Krishna just arranged everything, and I ran right past the passport check. No one said a word to me. Here I had a shaved head and a danda. Ran right past there were several checkpoints. You got to show this and show that. Ran past all of them. No one said a word to me. I ran right into the waiting lounge, the international waiting lounge, and went down, offered obeisances, and sat next to Prabhupada. He had me sit next to him. No official said a word to me, and I gave him the Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada was very pleased. He looked at it. Then he wanted to check to see if it was bona fide. So he said, "Can you translate this?" From Spanish back to English. I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." So he said, "All right." So he opened to the preface and said, "Read this in English." So I read it in English. Prabhupada saw it was correct. It was bona fide, so he was very happy. Then they called him for his flight just then, and he walked off holding the Bhagavatam and got on the plane, went to Miami. There were many stories. Then another time when we had the first Portuguese Bhagavatam, we were again, the same thing. We were so eager to give this to Prabhupada. So I was taking a flight from Sao Paulo to Lima, Peru, and then on to Los Angeles. And so the airport was in a very strange place, and every time we went there, the car got lost, and it got lost again. And we finally arrived at the airport after the flight had already boarded, and we were just determined we had to get this Bhagavatam to Prabhupada. So they said, "I'm sorry, the flight's closed," and that's it. So Mahavir was there. He was also very fired up. So he actually grabbed the walkie-talkie from the lady at the counter and started talking to the people on the flight and said, "Hold that flight." So they held the flight. So then they said, all right, you have to hurry. So then we ran to the flight, and we were so late, they wouldn't even issue a ticket there. Mahavir had to stay behind and buy the ticket. I just got on the plane. When I got to Lima, Peru, they gave me the ticket. And then I went on to Los Angeles. We met Prabhupada. He arrived that next morning. He went on his Vyasa-san, spoke, and then I was so eager to give him this Bhagavatam because it pleased him so much, actually. You knew that it would always please him to give him these books. So as he was getting off his Vyasa-san, I couldn't wait till he got up to his room. I handed him the Bhagavatam. So then we finally went up to his room, and he looked at me and said, "This is your most important service, printing and distributing books." So when he said that, those words, I felt went deep into my heart. It was actually a very important moment for me when he said that. But you could always please Prabhupada that way. I had the experience of being the GBC of all Latin America. And of course, we had so many projects. There were all kinds of things going on, you can imagine. And yet when I would go to see Prabhupada, the first question would always be, "So, how was the Sankirtan? How many books are being distributed? You would ask that question. Whenever Prabhupada would come back to America from foreign countries, I remember many times he would have a press conference, and he would always declare to the reporters, these are American boys and girls, I've not imported them from India. It was very important for Prabhupada to show that Krishna consciousness was being accepted by the people of that country. Similarly, one time, a GBC representative sent Prabhupada a picture of a new castle that had been rented in Geneva, Switzerland. And outside the castle, there were about 30 devotees in a group photograph. He sent this to Prabhupada, a big glossy picture. Prabhupada wrote back and said, it's very nice, but I have one question. Are these local devotees, or have you brought them from somewhere else? So, of course, this is not specifically on the topic of analogy, but it shows how Prabhupada was very concerned that the local people in each place actually understand Krishna consciousness. For example, when Prabhupada went to Nairobi, when Africa was just being opened, and I remember one lecture he gave in which he urged the people not to follow the false example of the so-called developed countries. And he gave a special lecture for those people in a third world country in Africa that they should pursue another line of development according to Krishna consciousness. So this, I think, is something that can be discussed also, is how Prabhupada in so many different countries presented something which was very appropriate and meaningful to the people of that country. For example, in America, he, knowing that Americans would naturally be proud of having the most important, materially most important country, he would sometimes praise. He simultaneously praised America and pointed out the flaw by saying that you have so many achievements, but all these achievements are like zeros. The fine roads, the buildings, the prosperity. They are material achievements, but they're also zeros. But if you put the one of Krishna in front of the zeros, then these achievements become real achievements. So that was preaching for America. When I was Prabhupada's secretary in Mayapur, Sridham Mayapur, 1976, I think in February, just before the annual meeting, Prabhupada told me several jokes. He told one joke about the Indian servant of a British lord who only knew 3 English words, which were yes, no, very well.
Very good.
Very good. So what happened is that one Indian was a servant of a British lord and had to leave the service, so he convinced his friend to take over the service. You heard the joke also. And so the friend protested, I don't know English. How can I serve this British lord? He said, you only have to know 3 words. Yes, no, very good. He said, if you know that, that's enough. So one time, so he took the job. So one time there was something missing. And so the British lord accosted this servant and said, did you take this object? He said, yes. No. So, will you give it back? No. So I'm going to call the police. Very good. This story, I think, illustrates how Prabhupada had a completely personal, individual relationship with each disciple, and what was appropriate for one person, maybe not for another, depending on the special relationship each had with Prabhupada. One time we were walking on the beach in Los Angeles, Venice Beach, and there was an intelligent young Indian boy that Prabhupada was obviously trying to cultivate and bring into the Krishna consciousness movement. So the boy came apparently from a good Hindu background, and as Prabhupada was speaking, he would occasionally quote some Sanskrit from the Bhagavad Gita, and Prabhupada would give him tremendous praise. Well, that's very nice, so you know that verse, very good, it's very good. And Prabhupada was encouraging him very much to quote these Gita verses. So I began to think, boy, this boy is getting so much attention and mercy from Prabhupada by quoting Gita verses. I know Gita verses. So I began to think, I want to get some of this mercy myself. But of course, this boy was just an outsider that Prabhupada was trying to cultivate. I was supposed to be Prabhupada's, trusted son. To make a long story short, as we were driving back, we were a couple of blocks away from the temple, I said, Prabhupada said something, I said, oh yes, Prabhupada, that reminds me of the Bhagavad Gita verse. And I quoted the Sanskrit. So Prabhupada just turned around and gave me this look and said, there are so many verses. And so that's the last time I ever tried that one. One story which shows Prabhupada's extreme tolerance. In 1972 in New Vrindavan, on Vyas Puja Day, we had the Vyas Puja ceremony in a special pavilion set up there. Were you there in 1972? And they cooked a very large cake for Srila Prabhupada and a great feast. So what happened is that somehow the word got around falsely that the cake and even the feast was Mahaprasadam. The Prabhupada had tasted it. And of course there was a type of devotional feeding frenzy. Naturally all the devotees, were mad after getting some of this Mahaprasadam on Prabhupada's Vyas Puja Day. So I drove Prabhupada back in my little car. That's another funny story. I was just a new sannyasi, and the GBCs and managers had made arrangements who would drive Prabhupada in this big car. And so actually right after the Vyas Puja ceremony, somehow or other, Prabhupada's car didn't show up there to take him back to his house, which was a couple of miles up through the hills. And so somehow or other Krishna inspired me, this is my chance, sort of like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that this was my chance. So I had my car nearby, I was a new sannyasi, and I had a little yellow Volkswagen Bug, those little yellow Volkswagens. So I raced to my car and turned the ignition and came around right in front of the stage where Prabhupada was, and I ran out, opened the door and said, Srila Prabhupada, we can go now. So anyway, one of the, I won't mention the name, but one of the big leaders was absolutely infuriated by this. But Prabhupada did get in the car, and off we went. And it was actually, thinking back on it, it was, I can't imagine a more sublime experience on Prabhupada's Vyas Puja Day, driving him alone through the forests, the hills like that. And so we drove a few miles up to Prabhupada's house, and then and actually as we pulled in, that leader had somehow gotten up there and he was sort of making faces and sort of cursing me so that Prabhupada couldn't see it, but I thought, well, I got the mercy. And Prabhupada didn't have to wait. So anyway, so then we went into Prabhupada's house, and he said, where's the lunch? And then he was informed that mistakenly the devotees had thought it was already Mahaprasadam. There was actually, on Prabhupada's birthday, Vyas Puja Day, there was no prasadam for lunch. And so Prabhupada's servant immediately said, well, I'll go cook again. And so he began to cook. But Prabhupada was totally undisturbed, not angry at all. And not to say that he would never become angry. He was soft as a rose and hard as a thunderbolt, like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. But in that particular occasion, he was actually very peaceful and happy. And then we just talked for a while until finally the lunch was cooked. Just a few months after I took sannyas, I was in Los Angeles with Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. I hope my voice is audible. We'll just Hare Krishna and Supereme Maharaj.
Yes, audible. You can continue.
Yeah. Yeah. Maharaj, with your permissions and of service, um, I will just speak few words for my own purification on His Holiness Hridayananda Swami, Hridayananda Goswami Maharaj. So I will share one of the slides prepared by Krishna Kirtan Pro and his so like most of us have heard about many of the Maharaj, but His Holiness Hridayananda Goswami Maharaj was one of the first disciples, one of the very first disciples of Prabhupada. So, like Maharaj appeared in like in 1948, and he appeared in Los Angeles, California, and he did most of his studies from Los Angeles, California. And in 1968, he came to Berkeley, for his graduation. And there he was visiting the temple frequently. And after visiting temple for almost 6 months to 1 year, he was very much impressed with the lectures of Prabhupada, and he received first initiation by Prabhupada in 1970. And his legal name is Howard J. Resnick. So we have heard a little that Maharaj has completed the remaining cantos, means the canto 10, 11, and 12, the purpose. His Holiness Hridayananda Goswami Maharaj, His Grace Gopi Paran Dhantru and Dravid Guru. GBC authorized all these three devotees to complete the remaining purpose, because Prabhupada completed all the purpose till canto 10, some of the chapters. So yeah. And in the meantime, Maharaj got married with Her Grace Ananga Manjari Mataji, and soon after in 1972, he received initiation, sannyas initiation from Prabhupada. And Maharaj resides mainly in US, in one of the states, and he is very well known for his deep studies and more philosophies and other things. And later in 1974, Prabhupada made him a GBC for Latin America. So he established most of the temples in Brazil and in many other cities. And he himself know more than 7 languages: English, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and three more languages. So while Maharaj was giving an idea that we had Portuguese Bhagavatam and many other things. So yes, he has this leadership quality and many other things. So from 1974 till 1980, he was the GBC of the Latin America, and gradually he was also the GBC of Italy and Greece. And later down the line, he was appointed as the professor in many of the universities. And by 1991, he enrolled for one of the programs in one of the universities. And the topic was not the, I will not say the topic, but it was the thesis. The subject of PhD was Sanskrit and Indian studies. So he completed his PhD from Harvard University in 1996. So therefore, you will see his name, that as Dr. Hridayananda Goswami Maharaj, right? And he was also the one, we hear about His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, His Holiness Vishnu Jan Sai Maharaj, distributing more and more literatures. But there are many occasions where Prabhupada was like joking, and he was teasing Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj that, see, Hridayananda, he has done more book distributions. And he was the one who started first with the library parties, approaching libraries for taking whole set of Prabhupada books. And there are some regions which are mentioned like Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, and he has established like many temples, farms, and communities, and helping thousands and connect to Krishna consciousness, academic outreach. So he has also given the lectures at the University of Berkeley, University of Florida, and Prabhupada, he was very pleased. I will give more information about Krishna West Initiative after reading after reading this mention about Maharaj by Prabhupada. So I'm so glad to learn that Hridayanand Prabhu has joined you in Gainesville. Gainesville is a city in Florida, and that you have got a nice place also. Now my desire will be fulfilled. I have wanted a center in Florida for a very long time. 2 years ago, I tried to open a center there with the help of one local gentleman, but it was not very successful. So you are now intelligent boy. I have heard so from Garg Muni Swami, and now Hridayanand is there also. So do something wonderful there in Gainesville. Wonderfully means simply chant loudly and distribute prasad. That is not very difficult. It is very easy. Simply if you do enthusiastically and sincerely, then success will be there. Right? So in this way, Prabhupada was very much appreciative of His Holiness Hridayananda Goswami Maharaj about the initiatives that he took, and he established more than 20 centers. Now I will give more information about this Krishna West initiative, because about this topic, this initiative, it it was controversial for many years, and how it became a part of ISKCON. So this when Prabhupada he reached America, so he was preaching this Krishna consciousness in proper Vaishnava attires, right? The sannyasi attires, and the proper Harinam Sankirtan, and in the proper Gaudiya Vaishnavism. But later down the years, Maharaj felt that many of the Americans, they are not accepting Krishna consciousness due to our dress, due to type of a Harinam Sankirtan, due to type of the prayers we chant, right? So his focus was that we should not accept we should not go in Gaudiya Vaishnava dress for preaching. We should have the normal dress, the pant shirts, right? And we should have more type of local music. Like we are preaching in the US, so we should have the US musics, not Bengali bhajans, right? We are preaching in another country, say Mexico. So we should have the local systems there. So it will be effective for the preaching. So there were many controversies, and even many of the senior disciples, senior devotees, they were also they were also not very much appreciative of this endeavor by His Holiness Hridayananda Das Goswami Maharaj. It started all in 2030. And on the Facebook and on the YouTube, you can see many songs which are picturized as the Hollywood songs and trying to preach Krishna consciousness, right? So in this way, we should not apply Vaishnav Tilak, we should not have the Vaishnav Kanti Mala when we are going for preaching. So in this way. So when the GBC meetings happened in Ujjain in 2017, that was the very first time His Holiness Hridayanand Goswami Maharaj came for the GBC meetings. Otherwise, it was very difficult to get him. So he came to Ujjain, and I remember very clearly, I was doing video recording of the class. So when Maharaj was present, he was giving lecture, Srimad Bhagavatam lecture, all the GBCs, means you can consider almost 40 plus Maharaj were there sitting in the temple hall. GBC meetings went on for 15 days. Every sannyasi was giving the lectures. Some of the Maharaj, they were attending it. But when His Holiness Hridayananda Goswami Maharaj was giving the lecture, like he was so much serious and so much grave, all the GBCs, regional GBCs, they were present. And that was the first time, like when this Krishna West initiative was incorporated into ISKCON, there had been like proper and proper understandings, and any controversies regarding Krishna West that it is not the initiative of ISKCON, it was all removed. So Krishna West became the part of ISKCON in October 2017. So that is no more any movement which is like running against, or which is like running parallel or running separate to ISKCON, right? And Maharaj like very clearly mentioned that all the teachings and everything are based on Srila Prabhupada teaching, and we are not trying to promote anything else. So in this way, like this Krishna West initiative was like a revolutionary concept, and like it was like getting much and much popular. But due to the like proper meetings which held in October in Ujjain, so it became the part of ISKCON. And Maharaj has like written many songs also that you can find on the YouTube and Facebook. The Facebook page name is His Holiness Nityananda Maharaj, Goswami Maharaj, and like his disciples called as Acharya Dev. And apart from that, like he has also written one like very beautiful, I will not say commentary, but a very beautiful book on Mahabharat, the quest for justice, the Mahabharat. And he is like preaching and guiding many of the devotees from the local place. So this is all about Hridayananda Goswami Maharaj. Thank you very much. So we can stop here. His Holiness Hridayananda Goswami Maharaj ki jai. His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai.